As we move over to the wide receivers, DJ Moore is at Arizona, kind of a feisty Arizona team all of a sudden, Lawrence. For DJ Moore, it's now back-to-back games with under 30 receiving yards. There's a lot of mouths to feed in this offense, and we've seen Caleb Williams randomly have these very, very slow starts. That's hurt DJ Moore at times this year.
Yeah, the Bears offense came a little bit back down to earth last week against a surprising Commanders defense that's been getting better. This one's scary, right? Because week 8, DJ Moore had 16% of the targets. Week 7, 17% of the targets. So Keenan Allen's coming on. Rome Odunze's coming on, like you said. A lot of mouths to feed here. This one is actually scary, but I do think the Arizona defense is come and go here. This could potentially be another shootout game. So I'm going to leave this slightly open. I'm going to keep this one slightly open. I'm not loving it because there's so many receivers there, and it's not like this offense is just doing 2013 Denver Bronco Peyton Manning type numbers. So I'm going to keep it open, but that's because there's so many receivers hurting fantasy.
Yeah. Yep. Open for me as well, just because it's DJ Moore in a favorable matchup indoors as well. But Connor, what do you think is going on with this Chicago passing offense at the moment? Caleb Williams frankly looked like Patrick Mahomes in London and then really came back down to earth against the Commanders for 3 quarters at least. Looked good in the 4th quarter. Where is he at the moment?
Yeah, you go through those first 3 quarters. He was big play hunting. Things were drawn up for him to kind of take the yards that were there, including even DJ Moore. They used him in the backfield on that little swing route. And Caleb, he just took the big play to Keenan Allen at times. So they just need to kind of have him dial it down and take what the defense is giving him. And he didn't do that for 3 quarters against Washington. But we did see him for 2 weeks play at a really, really high level. So
yeah, for sure.
I'm with you guys that because of the matchup and because of the lack of depth at wide receiver in fantasy, you have to ride this out.
He was real mobile that game. He was really mobile in that
almost
pocket.
like adrenaline pumping to a fault. He was where he was from, the DMV area. He was against this Rookie of the Year front runner. It felt like he just wanted to win the game in one play over and over again, and you're not going to be able to have a productive DJ Moore if you have that mindset.
Yep. Did think it was encouraging that as bad as he was the first 3 quarters, he did kind of figure it out in that 4th quarter, which I think showed a lot of growth to be able to kind of overcome that poor start.
I completely agree. Our next wide receiver is Jayden Reed in a massive matchup against the Lions. He's wide receiver 26 for Matthew this week. He's got just 7 targets over his past 2 games. Jay, we talked about this all summer. With the Packers, it feels like Jayden Reed's the receiver you want on talent, but actually trying to project their target share is a mess week after week.
Yeah, it's a frustratingly egalitarian offense in Green Bay. You don't know if it's going to be Dobbs or Reed or Wicks or Watson or even Tucker Kraft getting involved, as well as you look at the receiving leaders on the Packers the last 2 games. Jayden Reed, just those 7 targets, to be getting less than half the targets of Romeo Dobbs. Seems a bit jarring, and I think that he is, Lawrence, the most talented receiver on this team, perhaps by margin, but it just seems like the wealth is so evenly spread that you just don't know who is going to be the guy week to week. But the Lions really struggle against the slot, and so you expect that Reed should be able to be better than he has been the past 2 weeks. So keeping it open for me, he just clears a certain talent threshold where I just think you have to start Jayden Reed every week. Yeah,
the Lions are actually giving up the most receptions per game to the slot position, which is where Jayden Reed plays. The thing that's scary is getting, if we have another game like he's had his past 3 weeks where he's only averaged 31 receiving yards per game and nothing in the run game, because he'll get you the little 20 rushing yards per game. He's had 0 rushing yards in 3 straight games, right? The thing that's scary is if we get another game like this, then it'll go back to the talk of like, oh, we don't know which Green Bay wide receiver it is you want to start in fantasy, because that's what it was coming into last season. Early this season, Jayden Reed established himself, but now with Christian Watson back, Romeo Dobbs has had a couple of good games. Dontavian Wicks is their big play receiver. Tucker Kraft is all of a sudden a top 5 tight end in fantasy. So this is his shot, because this is a potential shootout if, Jordan Love is in here. But so that's why I'm going to keep it open today.
Yeah, and that's a big one to keep an eye on, is that Jordan Love dealing with the groin injury. We have to assume he's going to play. If he doesn't, that changes the projections for all of these pass catchers. Jay, is there any one that you could be the most confident in right now? It feels like Dobbs, since he was unhappy with his role and missed a week, has, is squeaky wheel kind of theory with him.
Maybe more kind of fringe wide receivers should protest their role in the offense and sit out a game and get suspended because it did seem to work.
Since he came back, he's been balling.
Been great. And getting a lot of red zone looks too.
I would tell you this though, if Malik Willis starts, I kind of like Dontavian Wicks the most, just because he's already caught a touchdown pass from him. He's the big play guy. He's he's probably the best red zone target in that scenario. I would say but I don't think we start any of them except Reed.
Those scheme touches to Reed if Malik Willis has to play screens, jet sweeps.
Yep.
But I mean, how relevant that ends up being is
I think
risky.
In general, in these type of situations where there is a cluster, I generally just defer to who is the most talented player. And I think the most talented player is Jayden Reed. So when Love is out there, I still think Reed is the guy that you want of the pass catchers. But yeah, I mean, there were worlds where it looked like Jayden Reed was going to be like a top 8 to 10 fantasy wide receiver. And that's probably, that world is much less likely now, but I still think he's a viable, wide receiver 2 each week.
Yeah, Matthew has him wide receiver 26. He's keeping that one open as well. Wan'Dale Robinson has the Commanders this week. He's been a bit of a PPR scam artist here, Lawrence, a PPR merchant Wan'Dale. He gets plenty of targets and catches plenty of short passes a game, but he's got under 40 receiving yards in 3 of his past 4 games right now in an offense that doesn't have a lot of answers.
Yeah, to be exact, those last 4 games of yardage, 36, 50, 23, and 30. So I'm going to close this one out. Look, Commanders defense, man, one quarterback is thrown for more than 145 yards against this Commanders defense in the last 5 games. The one quarterback was Lamar, and it included Caleb Williams and Kyler Murray. So it ain't just a bunch of scrubs they going against. So we about to have to start taking the Commanders defense a little bit more seriously here, right? And it's not like the Giants are some pass-heavy, pass-efficient offense here. We're starting one receiver in this offense, and that's Malik Neighbors, because early on in the season, Wan'Dale Robinson was getting double-digit targets every game. He may give you a touchdown with it, but there's no yards with it. If we're getting 60, 70 yards, that's okay. But when we getting 36 and 23 and 32 and all that, I'm good on that. I'm closing it out.
Jay, it feels like since Malik Neighbors got hurt and Darius Slayton really stepped it up in his absence, now Neighbors is back, but they haven't phased Slayton out of the offense, and that's starting to hurt Wan'Dale as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that a lot of Wan'Dale's receptions are in the kind of area where Malik Neighbors is going to take over too, and then Slayton's getting stuff down the field. And look, I just think that with Andrew Thomas done for the season and the Giants, the state of their O-line, that a lot of Wan'Dale's work, like his average depth of target, 4 yards, average depth of target, averaging 6.9 yards per reception. I just think in this offense, Daniel Jones just can't service 3 different wide receivers. And yeah, you'd probably still have Wan'Dale above Slayton, but it's Malik Neighbors and then not much else.
The good news for the Vikings this week against the Colts, they are expected to get TJ Hawkinson back. The bad news for Jordan Addison seems to be that the targets have been going downhill, and that'll only continue with Hawkinson's return. It seems like there's some frustration here. Jay's got 3 or fewer receptions in every game this season. There's no volume for Jordan Addison in an offense that has come back down to earth a little bit recently.
Yeah, it has. And look, I think the offense just overall is going to struggle without Christian Darrisaw, who is maybe, outside of Donald and Jefferson, he might be the most important guy in that offense. And look, there are worlds where Jordan Addison now might be relegated to being the 5th option on that offense, because you've obviously got Jefferson, Hawkinson, Aaron Jones out of the backfield. And then Jalen Naylor is a thing. I don't think he is going anywhere either. Now the Colts are a favorable matchup, but I just think that he hasn't had more than 3 receptions in a game this season. So what are you really doing with Jordan Addison outside of hoping for a big play? So I think you can do better than Addison this week, certainly.
Yeah, Sam Darnold is actually averaging 230 passing yards a game. That's good. That's almost a 4,000-yard pace for the season, but it's Justin Jefferson, big gap, and then everybody else. There is no, you can't call Jordan Addison a true wide receiver 2 on the team when he's only had 1 game over 70 yards this season. That's just not going to cut it. Closing it out this week.
All right, our last one here, guys. Jake Ferguson against the Falcons. He comes in as tight end 7 for Matthew this week. He's got under 25 receiving yards in each of his past 2 games. Lawrence, it feels like with Ferguson, the big sell with him was, after CeeDee Lamb, he's the guy. But Dak has not been looking his way for a couple games now.
Yeah, that's been tough. Dak just been looking he trying to look for anything right now. But there's hope here against the Falcons, who are a bottom 10 team against tight ends in fantasy. We saw what Cade Otton was able to do against Atlanta last week. He was the top tight end. The 2 previous weeks, they allowed Noah Fant and Jatavian Sanders both to have solid days. They both had 10 fantasy points against the Falcons defense. So that's your hope right there, is that, Dak can get to making Jake Ferguson an option in this offense. And then the fact that Atlanta doesn't defend the tight end well. So I'm going to keep it open this week for Jake Ferg.
While it hasn't been pretty, Jay, I mean, the tight end landscape is what it is. It's hard to picture anyone sitting Jake Ferguson.
No, I think you got to start Jake Ferguson, particularly after what Cade Otton did. Look, the Falcons' defense quietly, I don't think it's really been covered because they are winning games. They're heavy favorites to win the division, but this hasn't been a good defense at all. They just have no pass rush whatsoever, and I think Dak in a dome with time against a suspect pass defense, that's a recipe usually for compiling stats. And yeah, as uninspiring as Jake Ferguson and this passing offense has been, after CD Lamb, Jake Ferguson is still the guy that you want. So I think you can start him with some degree of confidence. And look, this is Dallas' season on the line. They're 3-4. They lose this, they still have hard games coming up on their schedule. It's going to get very loud and awkward in Dallas if they go to 3-5.
To recap, Matthew's Keep It Open, Close It Out rankings. We started with Geno Smith. He's got a really good matchup against the Rams. He's QB 10. Keep that one open. Nick Chubb against a tough Chargers defense. He's still RB 25. That's an open. Javonte Williams is going up against the best run defense in football against the Baltimore Ravens. Falls all the way down to RB 31. You can close that one out. DJ Moore, he's got the Cardinals. The wide receiver landscape with injuries is an absolute disaster at the moment. Keep in mind the Steelers and the Niners are also on bye weeks. DJ Moore stays open at wide receiver 21. Jayden Reed against the Lions. Yes, the Packers' target share is frustrating, but he stays open at wide receiver 26, assuming that Jordan Love does play in that game. Wan'Dale Robinson against the Commanders. He's wide receiver 41. That's a close. The yardage is just not there for Wan'Dale Robinson, and now the targets are spread around between Neighbors and Slayton and even Theo Johnson a little bit as well. Jordan Addison against the Colts. He's had a target problem all year. He's wide receiver 43. That's a close as TJ Hawkinson is set to make his long-anticipated return. Speaking of tight ends, Jake Ferguson against the Falcons. He's still a top 10 play. Tight end 7, keep it open. The guys highlighted some important points that the Falcons' defense is not good against the tight end position right now.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.